Welcome, ladies, to the Real Estate Investor Show, providing inspiration, strategies, and insight to empower women investors to live balanced and financially free lives. Now, here are your co-hosts, Liz and Andressa.
So in today's episode, ladies, we have Mandy McAllister. She's a multifamily investor, a mindset ninja, she calls herself. She's an extraordinary person for so many reasons. She's built up her company from nothing to focused on multifamily. That's one of the things I think you're going to appreciate most about today's interview. She talks a lot about student housing, how she got her start with a fourplex. We get into a little bit of how some tips there if student housing is of interest to you. But then she talks about transitioning to multifamily, how she did that, some really specific tips if that's something that's of interest to you. And it's quite honestly helpful to apply to any niche. So I really appreciated going from her path from student housing to multifamily and her giving some great tidbits along the way to get you there.
And if you are into mindset, this is like a treat for you. She said something during the interview that is like so true. What got me here will not get me there. And that is so powerful to really be aware of our thoughts regarding ourselves, our self-worth, what we are up to in the world, because this will determine your success or will hold you back. So we went there. We talked about it, and she gave very specific tips about how can we pass that and really move forward and achieve our goals, meaningful goals that have an impact in the world. So this is such a great episode, and I would not miss it if I were you. All right, enjoy the episode. Bye.
Welcome back, ladies. This is Liz.
And this is Andressa.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Investor Show. We are so excited to have an amazing guest on our show, Mandy McAllister. Thank you so much for being on our show. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Oh, hi. It's my pleasure. Thank you both for having me.
I met Mandy at an event probably, 2 years ago in Chicago. And as soon as I met her, I'm like, I love her. I know. I just want to take you home with me back to Pennsylvania. So we're going to get into Mandy's story here in a moment and just get into her. She just got a phenomenal story, and really we're going to dissect some really neat things with her. But like we always do, Andressa, we'd like to get connected to all the amazing women and men who watch our show. So thanks for being on this journey with us. Thank you for listening. There's so many podcasts, so many great podcasts, and so many things you can be doing with your time. So thank you. Thank you for taking time to be with us on this journey and listen to the show. We really appreciate it, and we're really grateful for you. We always like to kind of kick things off with some sort of quick story, and then we like to dive into our interview. So we are renovating our master bathroom at our house, me and my husband. And
you mean you and Matt are renovating?
No. Sorry. Let me rephrase that. We hired someone to help us renovate our master bathroom. Sorry about that. No, me and my husband, for being in real estate investing for 15 years, are like literally the worst handy people in the world. So you don't want me fixing anything. And then Matt tries to do stuff. My husband is like, I think we need to hire someone. I'm like, yeah. So we're not good. No, we're not very good at that. So what we did, we put this off for a while, just like I think we were able to build our business, and just delayed gratification has been a value of me and my husband's for a long time, sometimes to a fault. So anyway, we started getting leaking in our ceiling. So we're like, we need to literally redo our shower because we're getting water in our ceiling now. So that caused us, not only was it 20 years old, looked really bad, functionally obsolete, but now this has become a problem. So we hired someone and they redid tile. It's beautiful. But then, when you do part of something and then I'm like, not to be gross, but I'm like, go to the bathroom, right? And I'm looking down at the old school 20-year-old other tile. I'm like, that's really bad compared to what I see this beautiful shower stall.
You guys are funny.
So then I'm like, and then I looked at the countertop and I'm like, oh God, this thing's bad too now. I didn't even notice it before. So we've been kind of like, now we're going to probably do a little more work. And then I had the thought, why I wanted to share this with everyone. I had a very unworthy thought. And I said, here I am investing in my master bathroom, right? Who's going to see this except me and my husband, quite honestly? Should we put the money into something that more people can enjoy? And I'm like, that's an unworthy thought. That's like my frugal, old school, unworthy, mindset coming out. And I stopped myself. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to see this bathroom every single day for the rest of we're staying here for a long time. So I damn well want a nice bathroom. Yeah. And I want to change the old school tile.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm not going to feel bad about that. And I had to talk myself. I had to give myself a little pep talk because I'm like, well, we did the shower because it was leaking, not because it was aesthetic, And I'm like, that's just old thinking. And I think as women, we really grapple with that a lot of the times. And, you got to be like your little person on the side saying, no, stop that thinking. You're worthy of a nice damn bathroom. I'm not going to save it for everybody else. No, I want a nice bathroom. And there's nothing wrong with that. So I just want to share that.
I am so proud of you. It's not even funny because I know, you are beautifully a selfless person, right? You and Matt are the most selfless people I probably know. But what you're saying here is different. It's not that by doing that for you guys, you're going to be selfish. Quite different. It's like self-worth. You are worth it.
And I was really guilty. I mean, I'm feeling like struggling. I'm sharing because I'm still struggling with it a little bit, but I know it's the right thing for my growth with feeling worthy and feeling like, you know what? I can't do everything for everyone else except, I want to change the tile. I deserve that, not because it's broken or it's leaking, but just because,
Yes. And listen, if you need help with the selections and great deals.
I have a call. I have a call and I want to call you later. I want to show it to you. So.
And get a great deal on a tile or on a vanity that might fulfill that, frugal bug that you have. So you're like, oh, good. I got a good deal here and I still got my bathroom. So I'm very proud of you, Liz.
Well, thank you. Without further ado, Mandy, you're involved in so much from multifamily to, I know you got your start in student housing and you've done a lot of neat things and you have a shared passion, just like Andres and I, for supporting women in this business and in this world. And I love your posts. I love your community that you're building as well. So I appreciate that we have a shared passion for this, really helping women, especially. So we always like to do, when we kick things off, share a little bit about for our listeners, what propelled you to get involved in real estate investing?
Yeah, sure. So I was born into a family, both my parents are self-employed. So that's always kind of been in my blood, so I was kind of knew I would want to run something of my own. But when I was in college, I remember being at a party and whatever friend was talking about her dad bought this house that we were having this party at, and she was renting out the rooms to our fellow friends. Right. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And you get to keep that extra money. That's the best. That's the most amazing idea I've ever heard in my entire life. So the idea of real estate investing as a, kind of a secure, asymmetric risk return thing with a hard asset was born. And then, it took many years of learning, and I worked on the floor of the Board of Trade and was a trader for some time. So to see what paper assets or, commodity contracts can, I saw guys lose millions of dollars in seconds because it's on paper. It's not a hard asset, so that kind of informed the way I looked at stuff too. And then many years later, tried to employ the BRRRR strategy on a condo that I lived in. But in 2008 in Chicago, we weren't done going to the bottom of where we were correcting yet. So that didn't happen in the time frame that I thought it would, and ended up in 2016 was my actual first purchase for express purpose of investment.
So let's talk about that deal. Right? How did you find that deal? How did you fund that deal? Because those are the most common questions. And the reason why we ask that, because we have found out that women are very creative the ways, or they go to the, standard. There's nothing wrong with that. But we are very curious because sometimes there is like a twist that might help other people how to get their first deal and get it funded. So would you mind sharing how did you get that?
Absolutely. And honestly, this first deal, this fourplex that I did by Illinois State University, it's about 2 hours from Chicago. This is my absolute favorite deal to talk about.
Why is that?
Because it was my baby. It was the thing that, I was nervous. I was, imposter syndrome-y. I do not belong here. I'm pretending to be a real estate investor. People told me I was pretending to be a real estate investor. And this big jump I needed to take the overcoming of that kind of fear monster is what helped me get to these cool things I'm getting to do now. But that's why it's my favorite one to talk about. And I really think too, now that I'm playing in this multifamily world, we talk so much about how many doors, and it's not an interesting deal unless it's 400 doors and whatever. This, fourplex still throws off $1,100 in cash flow every single month for me, So I love this message of, especially to women, it's okay if you walk before you run. Taking the first step, the next right step, is the thing that matters right now to propel you into success. So the fourplex, it was, the thing I did right is I really sought out the advice of people who were there locally. So I kind of did a ton of market. I had the thought, kids will keep going to college, right? That's not going to change. If restructure and refinance or whatever in the world of student college education changes, I still think kids will go to college. So I looked at state universities in Illinois. It just so happened in 2016, Illinois State was tearing down a couple of their dorms. And they had the strongest growth of student population. So I'm like, that's my market. That's kind of how I narrowed down which market I was going to go to. And then I asked someone, all right, you just graduated from Illinois State. Who did you go to when you wanted to rent an apartment to live off campus? And they said, oh, you go to one of these two property managers. She named two property managers. I interviewed them both and really hit it off with the way one of the property managers thought, and ended up, kind of learning we can rent by the bed as a furnished rental, or we can do an unfurnished rental. And then looking at those numbers, an unfurnished rental for a 1-bedroom was at $450 a month. But if I furnished it, it was $750 or something like that. So it's worth buying a couch if you're going to basically double your rent, So the deal I found, I learned that this, putting something in its best use was really kind of the play there. So I found something on MLS that was renting unfurnished, but in the middle of a bunch of furnished rentals that this group that I go through manages. So I found it on MLS, I paid full price. It was $120,000. It was, kind of a layup now that I'm looking back, but I knew it wasn't being utilized to its best potential. So that's why I could pay a little more.
Yeah. And that's like a myth, because sometimes we put so much pressure on ourselves and say, I should not pay full price. Mm-hmm. Listen, if you know the potential of the property that is higher than that, I'm comfortable putting full price because I know the value is higher. So I'm actually getting the discount that I consider all my books valuable. Don't get me wrong. I will always negotiate something, but there are certain deals that either it's like take it or leave it. And this is it. So I love what you're saying, that you did that, and it's still a deal. It's still a deal. Yeah. So, right. What is a deal for somebody might not be a deal for somebody else. So I think that we need to demystify this thing about that deals cannot be found on the MLS, that we don't need to pay full price, because then we're crossing out so many deals that might be a good cash flow, as in your case. Yeah. We might be missing opportunities.
And I so completely agree with that. And I mean, I think it was listed at $125. I paid $120, but it was still basically full price. But I think the thing you have to figure out as an investor is, what is the thing that matters most to you? Again, in my multifamily world, lots of people most honor how many doors do you have, right? I most honor how much cash flow does it throw off, right?
Let's talk about that, right?
Right.
Because we go to conferences back in the day and we're like, I have so many doors and Yeah, let's talk about cash flow.
But what I'll tell you is, you're gonna do a different deal if number of doors is more important than cash flow to you.
Sure.
Yep. And vice versa. So I'm cool being the person that does, 4 and 6 and 8 plexes, because I'm throwing off a ridiculous amount of cash.
Absolutely. Yeah. And knowing what your goals are, right? I mean, that's the key. And what are you trying to build? And none of the other stuff really matters. It's all noise really. But starting from that, I wanted to speak to two things really quick and then get back to student housing if we can. So I think that's a really, it's a powerful niche. I'm curious. It's not my first question, but I want to like circle back on how the world that we're in terms of COVID has impacted that. But we'll go there in a second. Two things I just want to speak to. I love that you said you started by local market and local support, and you literally asked a student the questions. I mean, I think so many times people are like, I don't know how to do research in a local market. And they spend days on doing research when they literally can go and ask, well, probably not as easy right now, but regardless, it's just as easy to like ask people who are your potential customers, where they go and what they do, like simple, easy. And people don't even think about that. So I love that. I love that strategy. I want to just highlight that. And I also wanted to say, when you buy a property, most people don't ask, what is the highest and best use of this property? So if investors led from that question, right, which is exactly what you did, Mandy, everything else falls into line versus how much, the cash flow is a really important question. But you also, most importantly asked, what's that highest and best use and how do I strategize this? So I love that. But tell us a little bit more about student housing, because it's been always an intrigue of mine, quite honestly, selfishly. We don't actually have any student housing as property. It's not been a focus of ours. We once tried to rent to students in like close to a college area. That never works. I don't think we really focused on the niche and really focused on providing what they needed. So when people are navigating, and I was talking to an investor a couple of weeks ago, they were talking a little bit about student housing. When people are navigating student housing, and whether or not to, like we talk about exit strategies. Should I take this 3-bedroom and rent it to a family? Should I, it's 1 block from this college. Should I do that? College kids are a little, they're a unique customer, if you will. So how did you navigate? Like what were some like critical tips if people are trying to evaluate student housing as a niche in investing?
So in terms of, basically what I'm going to tell you here are my happy mistakes. So I was by no means an expert.
I like that. Happy mistakes. I'm going to totally steal that, Mandy.
Oh yeah, please do. So, okay. Right. So it just so happened that this 4-plex was 1-bedroom units. It come to find out, in this world of COVID, that's really strongly demanded to kind of weave in your other ideas.
That is so true.
Yep. My property manager with whom I had a call recently, they were having a lot of trouble renting out their 4-bedroom units. What they're having to do is rent 2 bedrooms and then do 2 as like study areas. So that takes your NOI and slashes it in half. Right. But if you have a 1-bedroom unit, you're, sitting pretty. So initially my thought was, I'm going to attract like either, graduate students, call it, who want to live alone, or kind of the, bookish folks who aren't necessarily going to have a kegger. And, so I'm going to avoid some of that stuff that investors are scared of, that, these students are going to ruin my property. Well, I'm also keeping a security deposit.
Yeah.
And I have their parents co-sign. So that what if they ruin the property is not a concern of mine. And it's frankly, I hope a bunch of investors continue to think that, so I continue to find the deals. You know what I mean? So I'll tell you too that this 4-plex, it was, you can get just a normal residential loan on that. That's what I did. Right. An interesting thing is we were looking into 170 something unit at another college town. The lending that you can get on that. So when you go into multifamily, and I don't want to kind of get into the weeds, but the types of loans that you can get in multifamily, this non-recourse Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac agency debt, is part of the reason the bigger stuff is so attractive. You can't qualify for that for Fannie and Freddie larger debt. So navigating the larger assets is a little different in terms of the lending. So right now in the COVID world, I would say if you can find something that's 1 or 2 bedrooms in an area that's close enough to the school. What I'll also tell you is we talk in A, B, C, D assets. A used usually new construction and so on and so forth. In student housing, the way I kind of think about ABCD rankings is how close we are to campus center. So I don't want to buy anything that's more than, call it, a mile from campus center because, kids are going to want to walk to class. And in Illinois, it's real cold. So you're not going to walk more than, call it 20 minutes. Yeah. So, yeah.
I love that. And for those who are not familiar, it is really helpful to get, like, when people start saying, what's that local market look like? There's different types of markets, and you need to know, obviously, age of property is enormous, right? Mm-hmm. The new construction is one spectrum, and the properties that are, 50 years old in terms of age is a different ball game. So age of property is one thing. Also, safety and crime impacts how all these properties are played out in terms of, where they are on the spectrum of what Mandy was just referring to. So Google that to get, even if you're not familiar, start thinking about, where do I want my market to, what type of market do I want to invest in? So I just want to mention that for folks not familiar with that at all.
Yeah, I have a question about like your avatar, right? Your students. When we think about like student housing, we think about worst case scenario, like kids just like destroying the house or being super, not respectful. So I understand the numbers, but how do you prevent or set your standards to make sure that you don't have to spend too much time on the managing or fixing things that I'm sure right now, I'm hope like parties on that type of stuff is not happening. But in terms of like what people must put in place on their lease, is it different from a regular, quote unquote, regular tenant, or things that you're like, oh, I didn't know that. I should, now it is, and this is why.
So I'm a huge proponent of leaning on property managers. And I am so incredibly lucky that the property manager that I ended up finding by way of asking that student is so adept at this. So, first off, just the type of asset it is attracts a different type of tenant, of student. So I don't have as many problems because it's the avatar of the kid is different, and then my property manager has the question you just asked me, Andressa, is a question I ask my property manager because we talk once a month for 10 minutes. That's right. Where we're at in the management of this asset, because I got a lot going on. I do not have the bandwidth to be taking calls from any tenant, let alone a student, So I would tell you to, and any listener out there to really find the property manager who looks at things that will treat it like their own and, secret shop them, really go in, ask a bunch of students if you can. When we were looking at that 170 whatever in a different student market, I made a Facebook post. Who do I know that's going to this school and or has kids that are there or just graduated? Please, I would love a chance to chat. And had a chance to have some conversations with kids to kind of understand the lay of the land. It's not terribly hard to find people to chat with in that way.
Love that.
Yeah, I love that too. And it's a good reminder that as most investors get very hands-on, they manage it themselves. They're doing everything themselves. I used to clean apartments. I put furniture together. I've done it all, me and my husband. And you think about that, and that was the right decision at that time. I'm not going to beat ourselves up. We learned the business. We learned how to be landlords so that we can hire property managers. And we know what to ask these people because we manage property. I'm a big fan, not that there's one right or wrong way, but I am a big fan of getting some experience. So you know what the hell to ask these people. Because if you don't even know what to ask, you could get taken. You got a great team member. That doesn't happen for everyone. But I love what you're saying in terms of, having that strong expertise so that you can really build that team around you. You cannot be an expert in everything. There's no way. So I do love that because especially student housing, they have to know what they're doing, right? It's such a niche, right? Yeah. There's probably those, like to Andressa's point, those are fears. But to your point, you got an expert on your team who knows what they're doing. Those fears get dissipated.
Well, and like you were saying, the let's get hands-on, let's dig in, totally agree that it's important. But I think that it's easy, when you're in that world of, oh, I can handle it best. Well, we do this as women with the laundry. Do you know what I mean? It is so easy to do. But, in terms of my growth as a real estate investor, what got me here won't get me there.
That's right.
So I have to really understand how to work on my business rather than in my business.
And you did that perfectly well because you just posted recently, which we saw. We've always, appreciated you and we always wanted to have you on the show. But what reminded us, hey, we got to reach back out to Mandy. You posted something about your 53 unit, right? Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about that and how that came to be, how you, how you found it, everything, around it. It would be great to show that path, right? And that you did expand.
Yeah. So started with that fourplex, did a few more small multis, bought into as a passive investor into a syndication to learn what that felt like from the passive side. And then one thing I realized of the what got me here won't get me there thing was, I was the whole ball game. Yes, I was just one team member and I had property managers and lenders and, a ton of help on the stuff I owned myself, but I took on partners for the 53 units. Right. So that's in terms of getting to a new level of growth, partnership is the big lesson that I learned. So I run a multifamily centered meetup in Chicago because I wanted to talk multifamily and there really wasn't one 4 years ago when I started it. And ended up having someone who came to my meetup who was a broker in Chicago. And, we grew a friendship, ended up meeting at a ton of other networking events and, ended up just becoming friends, talking deals. And my brother lives in Indianapolis. So he knew I was interested in that market. When he ended up down there, he asked if I would like to start looking at deals. So he actually had a number of relationships with brokers who also went to Indy because he's a broker by profession here in Chicago. And actually, he's the one that was brought the deal. So we believe very strongly that for this larger stuff, relationships with brokers is the easiest, the path of least resistance, because they're doing all kind of the cold calling and stuff that many people would do. But like we said, if the deal works, if I get my cash flow number that I need, who cares if I went through a broker or off market or direct to seller,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
On our Facebook community, for those of you that are not listening, don't know about that, please check out our Facebook community with more than 5,000 members there that want to support one another. And one of the questions that we always get there is about partnerships. Mm-hmm. People, I love what you're saying. What got me here will not get me there. Mm-hmm. And I think that is hitting more than ever because we get to a stage on our career, on our business that we're like, something is missing. And sometimes it is leverage our time, our finances, our experience and everything. But there is like a blind spot, right? Partnerships. We know that by partnering up with other folks, we'll get further, but still we try to do things on our own. So what is holding women back? And what I'm hearing is like this big concern that other folks will not carry the load as much as we know we will, right? So from your experience, how do you know somebody will be a good partner and will work as hard as you?
So my partner, Brian, I have seen him work on deals. I have been his, kind of contemporary through this multifamily investing for some time. And the level of hustle of this guy, the level of preparedness of this guy that I observed as a friend for years was admirable to me. So I knew from my own observations that I could depend on him, that it wasn't going to be like my senior year of college class project where I'm the one doing everything. You know what I mean? And, there's a lot of I believe very much in partnership is like a marriage in many ways. You have to have all of these hard conversations up front. And you know what, guys, I have screwed up partnerships before this. I lost a bucket of money, a huge bucket of money to a partner who kind of just ran away with it. And I'll tell you, one more thing, the huge lesson there is I do background checks on my partners. I want to know, is there a bankruptcy? Is there a short sale? Is there, criminal history? Like I need to know this, because you're not going to tell me that if you got arrested in 1994, but I want to know, and I want to see how you deal with hard questions from me. And if you don't deal well, then when stuff is going poorly in what we're working on together, I know that's going to be a hard conversation too. So, ask the hard questions, but do research your due diligence of the person in a big way too.
I love that. It's funny because that made me think of a conversation we were in last night about vetting syndicators. And the person said, how do I vet them? And, and we all kind of were jumping in as a mastermind kind of event we were having. And it was fascinating because I said, the question you want to ask them is, have they ever lost money? Mm-hmm. And what did they do about it? Because you know what? Everyone's lost some money at some time. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. Everyone's brought money to the table. And if you've been in this business long enough and you've done enough deals, that is an inevitable. Yeah. I mean, if you've done 4 deals, maybe not. And maybe some people love to talk about how they're amazing and they've never lost money. They've only made bucos of money. Great. They probably have done 4 deals, in my experience. They haven't done as much as others to warrant like the average of the law of averages, if you will. Mm-hmm. So my point though, in saying that, to your point, is like, asking those really tough questions of, it's tough things are going to happen. You're going to buy 53 units. Something tough, challenging is going to happen. It just is. Let's just be honest. So to your point, asking those questions, and I love the idea of doing a background check. I never thought about that. I know about background checks, but I think that's a great idea. That's a great one. I'm going to add that to my list of, I'm sending you a background check immediately after this interview. So
for $15, I could have not lost that huge amount of money by running that on a previous partner, I
love that.
Yeah.
And I think that when you say you take ownership about saying, listen, I screw up. That shows so much growth, because people that are just unaware and listen, Lise keep me on my toe. And we are working progress. Absolutely. And we work on the things that we need help there, or we need help here. And I we surround ourselves with people they're not going to tolerate BS around, right? But you were saying, I did screw up. That tells me that, you did a lot of your mindset. It's just like, I am okay saying that I screw up and I lost X, Y, and Z. Yeah. And this is the lessons that I've learned. So talking about mindset, do you believe that the mindset can hold a lot of people, even though if they know all the strategies, they bought the guru courses, they have all the books, the podcast and everything else. They have the knowledge. They know how to wholesale a deal, how to purchase a house, but they are still stuck. Do you think that's a mindset problem?
100%. And I first of all, I want to honor this conversation where we're at right here, because you have an incredible community. I'm working to grow my community. We're leaders of these communities, and the chance to get to say out loud where we are vulnerable and we have screwed up allows permission for so many people who are working to build footsteps in the same direction we're headed. So thank you for that opportunity. And in terms of mindset, I so firmly believe that it's the vast majority of anything you do. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you are right. I used to tell my volleyball girls I coach that all the time. And if I'm a product of it. I mean, look, it was the 90s when I decided real estate investing was interesting. And then every time someone would tell me something that, oh no, you need to own your own place to live before you can invest. Anytime I would get something that would give me an out to not pursuing something that was very interesting to me, I took it. And then I get to this point with this fourplex, it was $120,000. You guys, the payment on that is like $800 or something ridiculous. It's a courage muscle. It's a fear muscle. It's once you have done something and you've taken that leap and you realize you didn't die on the other side, everything else becomes easier. So, I would encourage any woman listening to this that if you have done learning and you can trust, what you have learned, trust what you've learned to a point, and then understand you're going to have to leap into the unknown in order to do the real learning. You haven't done the real learning yet unless you've taken that leap.
Mm-hmm. And you call yourself, I love that you call yourself a mindset ninja. I mean, so I read your bio, I had this vision of knowing what you look like and then seeing you, because my son is obsessed with ninjas, like literally there's ninjas everywhere in his room. It's like ninja all the time. We talk about ninjas. It's like, it's a big conversation in our household. So I love that you call yourself that. So tell us more about that and how it relates to everything you just said, because I got to know more about that.
Yeah, I made a choice a few years ago, probably 5 or 6 now, that, you don't get to pick a lot in life, but you pick your attitude, you pick your outlook. And we had this incredible conversation on our Aspiring Woman accountability call recently that, even if you think something bad about yourself and it's a knee-jerk reaction, you don't even control that, because it's these neural pathways that are ingrained. So if you think, oh, I'm fat, okay, well, you didn't control that. That's what you conditioned yourself. But what you do control is that second thought. You can either think, oh, yeah, and I ate that cake last night, or you can think, you know what, I'm going to make a better choice today. Which one is going to rewire you and which one is going to, establish that poor connection. So I so completely believe that you control your attitude and you control that second thought, and that is it. And my life has taken off in a big way, emotionally, spiritually, in business, ever since I made that one pretty simple decision. And I actually have had the opportunity to work on a mindset series with my friend, Barry Griffiths, on his podcast, the Wrestling with Real Estate podcast. We're doing a weekly mindset conversation for real estate investors. It's been so fun to get to talk through these issues with, multifamily investors.
I love that. I see like a retreat where we're all having like mimosas near somewhere very warm, talking about that, because we hear a lot that like, we are what we think. But as you were saying, let's challenge that, because we feel that we are in control of every single thought. And listen, sometimes I have freaking crazy thoughts that pass by and I was like, well, that was a crazy one, huh? Should not come to my mouth. Should stay there. All right, bye, crazy thought. All right, see you later. So like being aware of those thoughts and observing it. I love what you're saying. You're not in control of that, which I 100% agree. But you are the second one that comes after, right? Say, thanks for sharing, voice. Thanks for sharing that crazy thought over there, and our attitude. And then we kind of like start reshaping it. But my point is, can we do that on our own? Because a lot of women, including me, a long time ago, before we had, our investor community, I tried to figure it out on my own. And what I have found that I need a core group, a community that can back me up. Because when I share, listen, this is what's going on over here, I have people that, show my blind spot. Do you feel that people can figure out on their own, or there is a need of this sisterhood to say?
So I think the work is all internal. First and foremost, it's if you don't take ownership for the work that you're doing internally on your own mindset stuff, ain't no change gonna happen. However, we are, as women, are communal creatures. Back in the day, the hunter-gatherer, whatever, like we were picking berries and we were communicating like, don't get the ones by the water, those are sour and you got to go over here. Like we are people who need to talk. So, I think that, and honestly, we are not a real estate group. You are a real estate group. This chance to come to commune with other women on, full like wellness, full person stuff or real estate stuff, that is such a huge asset. So, first you have to take ownership that it is your work to be done, but no, you are not alone.
I love that. I love that because, in a lot of ways, sometimes we look to other people, right, to either solve it or figure it out. And then we're just like, I don't know, like that's like a card some people play. And I play it sometimes. And I'm like, hold on, like that's like the thought I had of unworthiness. You're not your thoughts. Your thoughts are not you.
That's got me. Yeah.
because I'm worthy of this. I have to remind myself of that because I have an old story that I tell myself, but that's a story. That's not me. That's not my highest version.
What got you here won't get you there.
That's right. Absolutely. With both your mind, but it starts with your mind. If you want to scale, like you just said, from a fourplex in getting into partnership. I also want to just pinpoint something you said I love. People often say, I want to get into multifamily. And then you're like, oh, what groups are you part of? I'm not part of any groups right now. Well, that's a problem. Yeah. You got to start surrounding yourself around the people. Like if you want to get into self-storage, I would be part of every Facebook community, every networking group. I'd start newbies in self-storage. I don't care, whatever you want to do. Like, I love that you started a meetup about the very thing you wanted to do more about. And then what did it do? It led you to building this relationship. It's not like, it wasn't like, wow, that's crazy that happened. Like you did a lot of hard work and you put the time in building the relationship with kudos goes to you. But people don't realize, like, I want more of this. I need to start spending energy there. And if it's not something, go start it. It's so easy. Do a virtual accountability monthly group on fill in the blank of what you want to get into. Mobile home parks. I don't care. I really don't. It doesn't matter. It's like, what do you want more of? Spend your energy there. I just love that you did that. And that opened up this amazing path, which you have jumped into and taken off with. Before we go, I want to ask one more important question about time blocking, because we get into this topic a lot with women about time management. And I think, you can't really manage time. You can only manage yourself, really, ultimately. Yeah. So that's a whole other discussion. But what, one thing that you do with time blocking, tell us a little bit about that, because that was something you were like, that is my recipe to how I'm able to do what I do. So, you got a lot on your plate. You're a single mom, you're growing this empire. So tell us a little about time blocking and how you've used it effectively.
So a couple of hacks on this. Actually, thank you for the chance to talk about this, because I think that there's a couple of things that aren't obvious that are benefits to this time blocking stuff, because the mom guilt that I felt from, I should be with my kid instead of like trying to take down this new 60 unit property, right? Like there's an inherent guilt, right? But a thing that I learned, and a lot of the mindset work I've done, books I've read, if I can show up completely, like I am with you guys completely right now. This is what is on my calendar. This has my full attention. And when it's time for my time with my kid, then I am full on phone off time with my kid. He appreciates 3 hours with mom going on an ice cream adventure way more than he would appreciate the full day mom answering a bunch of emails while she was with him. Do you know what I mean? So I that really helps me alleviate that mom guilt and gives me permission, personal permission, to focus on the stuff that's in front of me. And one more little hack there is, this idea of, there's a lot of science behind multitasking, this switching from one thing to another. That switching time makes you completely inefficient. So if you can, as your time blocking, batching your stuff you need to do. So I drive a lot for my day job. I end up yelling at Siri, hey Siri, call Liz Faircloth. Hey Siri, you know what I mean? So when I get to, this is my 2 hours for calls, I can just bang down all of those calls or all of these emails or all of these like spreadsheets I need to look at. The batching stuff puts my brain in a space and I'm not switching back and forth. It makes me significantly more efficient. Love that.
I love that. It made me think of The One Thing. It's a great book, great resource. Gary Keller, right? Who created Keller Williams. I remember learning that about the inefficiencies of multitasking in that book. I don't think and he puts some great statistics, and I don't remember them because I don't remember statistics usually, but it goes in my head and goes out of my head, but very powerful. And you're absolutely right. It's just inefficient, but yet it gives us this quick fix, right? This quick, we're doing a lot. We have to keep mindful of that,
and I think as women too, that, the hunter-gatherer days, we had to be we have this diffuse awareness, and men just needed to go kill one antelope, so focus, in my opinion, is significantly easier. And that coincidentally, I think, is why they can't find the ketchup bottle behind the mustard bottle. Because they didn't deal
with that.
Because they just need to kill the first antelope. They don't need to look for a specific antelope. you know?
That's
So
a really
anyway,
good-
so Allison Armstrong has these are her ideas. It's you would love to read her stuff. But anyway, so our brains are doing 1,000 things at once. So it's kind of incumbent on the female brain to try to harness that power in a big way. And for me, that batching stuff helps.
I love that. You know, it just made me think of it. I'm like, hey, honey, can you bring this up? And then like, if it's 2 things, if it's 3 things, I know he'll bring up one. And I'm like, I really needed, I forgot that. I'm like, it was 10 seconds ago. I mean, really, what else are you like, what else, you know, but you're right. It's like that. It really does. Justin and I were having a conversation the other day and we're trying to dig deeper on, you know, serving the women in our community. Cause that's what we're doing really sincerely. And we were talking about the hunting and the gathering, and it's so interesting because it's such a core, like, it's in like the beingness of women and men, you know, it's not like turn it off, turn it on. It's like this social conditioning for generations. Right. So it's not like, well, I'm just not gonna be a gatherer, you know? I mean, it's kind of like, okay, I can move beyond that. But you know, I love that. I love what you're saying. This is awesome. We can keep going, man.
I see the minute I met you, I'm like, I need wine with her, and we can talk for 6 hours.
I did. I just so enjoyed when you're like, you got to do a little YouTube session. I'm like, all right, I'm in, you know, It's great. Mandy, where can the women listening learn more about your business, your community, all the great things you're up to?
Thank you. So I've got like a wide net of things I'm interested in. So I kind of made a catch-all of mandymcallister.com. You can learn more about the Aspiring Women community and what we're building there, my real estate investment. And I actually, I made a calculator to help figure out what levels of financial freedom, what you need as an investor in order to hit those metrics, which I've found super helpful. You can find that.
Awesome. And all this information you guys can find on our show notes with all the links and everything you need to get in touch with Mandy. So now we're going to transition to our fabulous 3 questions. And the first one, Mandy, is what's the most transformational book you have ever read?
Oh, I'll tell you that more than just one book, I made a goal in 2017 to read a book a week. Well, listen to a book a week. And I got halfway through the year and already hit that goal. So I've been doing 100 books a year for the last 3 years. And the kind of breadth of that, putting ideas together, is really the most transformational thing. But I'll tell you, if I have to give just one, Think and Grow Rich for Women. It's you've heard of Think and Grow Rich, probably written in the 25.
They had it for women.
Yeah, it's Sharon Lechter wrote it. We're actually doing a book club on it if you want to join in Aspiring Women, December 17th. But it's basically, it reframes a number of really key things because women sometimes feel weird about money. And if she reframes something that clicked for me is I'm not seeking all of the money in the world. I'm seeking all of the impact in the world that I can have. And that's the same function. It just so happens money comes to me at the same time.
Wow. That it is really powerful. Like you start, like some wheels start turning here. It is so true. So the second question is, what's the most powerful routine that you did to create a financially free and balanced life?
The number one is the time blocking, is really making sure that I have carved out time for deep work, for real focus on what it is that I want to move forward. There's a ton of habits, but the biggest ROI is that time blocking.
Awesome. And the last question is, which woman, famous or not, has inspired you the most?
My grandmother, Jeanette. I'm Amanda Jeanette. She is Grandma Jeanette. She was my closest neighbor growing up on the farm a mile away. And just the kindness and grace and the ability to figure it out no matter what it was is something that I run directly towards every single day.
Awesome. Mandy, thank you so much for being on our show. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us, our listeners, and certainly all the great work you're up to. I mean, really, you have such a great, soulful approach here, not just, from a financial perspective, obviously, but clearly like you're passionate around connecting me. You listen to 100 books, like you're amazing. You're like my new hero here. So thank you for being on our show. Thank you for all you do and appreciate your time.
So grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mandy. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to receive updates on our next interviews, go to our website, therealestateinvestor.com. There, you can subscribe to our show, become part of our investor community, and get updates on upcoming episodes.
If you like our show, please share it with other women who would benefit. And don't forget to leave us a rating on iTunes. We'd really appreciate it. And as always, we encourage you to take one action as a result of today's show and put it into motion so you can live both a financially free and balanced life. Thanks for spending time with us.
Ciao.